Well, it's great to be here once again for Theologically Speaking, and we have been running a little series with some of our long-term faculty who have started into retirement. And we have heard recently from Dr. Jim Berg and from Dr. Dan Olinger, and today it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Mark Sidwell. Dr. Sidwell has been employed by BJU for 45 years, and about 20 or so of those he has been on faculty. He has been focusing primarily on the undergrad history faculty, but has been a big help in the seminary as well with our church history and our historical theology courses. So with some of these folks that are retiring, they might still be helping us out on an adjunct basis from time to time. So Mark has a number of things planned even for this coming year, but this is a major transition in his life and also a major transition for the seminary, because we have really relied on Mark for our church history courses, and he's made such a great contribution, and we're looking forward to just reflecting a little bit on what the Lord has done through you here at BJU. So Mark, can you just start by letting us know a little bit about your background and how you came to faith in Christ?
All right. Well, I was born and reared in Indiana, a native Hoosier. I guess like a lot of people in Testament, it goes back to my parents, first of all. They were from Kentucky. My father was converted in a revival service as a boy, but he was kind of in and out of church after that, back and forth. My mother, although she attended church growing up, she wasn't actually converted till after I was born, till I'm not sure what age, 3, 4, somewhere around there. So when I was about 4 or 5 or 6, we started going to church regularly. Dad was rededicated, Mom was converted, a number of our family relatives, we all went to this little church there in Newcastle, Indiana, factory town. So I grew up in that church. When I was 10 at a vacation Bible school service, I made my public profession of faith, and then grew up there in that very faithful little congregation. They're a very sincere and dedicated Christian folk.
That's great. Were they connected to BJU, or how did you end up attending here and then being on faculty?
No, there was no connection. Actually, what happened was, I have a cousin who's on faculty here, Dr. Lonnie Polson, who teaches in speech. And Lonnie had gone to Indiana University for his freshman year and really didn't like it that well, Christian in that atmosphere. So he asked our assistant pastor, do you know someplace I can go and study speech in a Christian school? And our assistant pastor had never been to Bob Jones, never visited. He said, well, I've always heard that Bob Jones has a good speech program. So he thought, okay. And so Lonnie came. His brother Sam Polson is a pastor in Knoxville now. He came, several others from our youth group. I came to visit, decided this is where I wanted to be. So I came in the fall of 1976 as a freshman.
Wow, 1976.
Bicentennial year.
Yeah, how about that? And you were studying what at that time?
I actually came here as an English major because I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. My freshman year, I changed to history.
Okay.
Those who know the university's history will know I was impressed by Dr. Edward Panosian,
Sure.
History of Civilization. And it just really, what my love was, my interest was, I was good at it. And so I changed to a history major for my bachelor's degree.
Okay. And then you went on for a master's and a doctorate here as well. Can you talk about what you studied there?
Yeah. We used to have the programs in church history in the graduate level. So I did the master's degree and the doctorate degree. Originally, I just went in the master's thinking, well, I thought I should get a master's in church history before I go someplace else and do a regular master's PhD in, secular history, so to speak. And after doing the master's, I really enjoyed that and thought, this is what I want to do. It suited me in a lot of ways. And so I stayed with the program and was able to do the coursework there with the main professors, Dr. Panosian and Dr. Beale, who I'll probably mention later here in the discussion, as well as all the other faculty in Old Testament, New Testament theology, and really appreciated what I got here in the graduate program, seminary program.
Yeah. Well, I'm always curious about memories you have of seminary life. I mean, we live and breathe this all the time, but it's great to reflect on people that the Lord has had here through the years and different emphases that he's used to shape his servants. So maybe talk about some of those memories, some of your favorite faculty or classes, and the impact that they would have had on you.
Well, there's two things I can think of. One is actually not faculty, but simply the fellowship or association with others in the seminary, the iron sharpening iron. I was a teaching assistant in the freshman history programs, and there was a number of us who I remember sitting all together at the dining common for lunch and solving all the world's problems in one meal. But all the people there were 3 others in the church history program who were graduate assistants.
Okay.
A number of others in Old Testament, New Testament. My office mate and roommate, my first year of graduate school, was Dan Olinger. And that was an interesting experience in itself. And I profited a lot from that. But there's that element that was very strong as we would sit and discuss and kick these things back and forth. When I thought of the faculty in the classes, I thought, for the sake of time, I'd mention the 2 that had the biggest influence, Dr. Edward Panosian and Dr. David Beale, the 2 main church history teachers. Dr. Panosian, in a sense, was the one who communicated what I like to call the philosophy of history, not in a formal sense, but in the sense of how we look at history, how we want to approach it. What do we take away? What can we learn from it? Also teaching it, I guess you would say here, a doxological aspect, how church history. Well, he once told the story of Dr. Charles Brokenshire, who was his church history teacher back in the 50s. And he said, he taught it with a sense of reverence. And I've often thought that really typifies Dr. Panosian as well. Dr. Beale was one who very much helped show for us, model for us scholarship, the idea of doing work, research, diligent research, digging things out. Anybody who's ever sat under Dr. Beale or read any of his work will know how he always was seeking out every source he could find. And the delight a historian finds when he finds a source he didn't know about and he can bring out here as well. In fact, Dr. Beale also would use the literature, but he taught a respect, I think. There's a tendency in history sometimes to focus on the latest literature, the latest revision and so on. And that's fine, because that's important. But he kind of put up, you can't ignore the older stuff that people are revising. You want to look to those older sources, older materials, histories for what they can bring out. So those 2 men, their impact, their teaching, what they modeled and lived out in front of us. Of course, that's really important. I mean, you can have somebody who's academically fine, but somebody, you would like your children to be like. That's the sort of people that they were as well.
Yeah. Well, I had both of them as professors, and I can echo everything you said there about their approach and also their godliness and the impact that they had. Through the years, we've had to make different changes and adaptations, so it's unfortunate we don't have a PhD in church history at this time, but there was a whole generation of men that focused on that and that received their training in that area that have gone on to make a big contribution.
Yeah.
And of course, you have written a lot. You're, I think, one of our more prolific seminary-related professors in terms of journal articles and books. And so maybe we'll talk about that some more later. But I was curious, related to your preparation here, can you describe a little bit your doctoral dissertation?
Well, my dissertation was on the history of the Winona Lake Bible Conference in Indiana. I'd actually started with a different topic. As I'll mention probably later, I was always very interested in the Swiss church historian Jean-Henri Merle d'Aubigné.
Yes.
And I began looking at that and realized there were going to be challenges there, most of which, of course, I wasn't going to get to the archives in Geneva probably and look at that. And in fact, I found out later there was another historian who at the same time was doing a dissertation on Merle, and who in fact had been a missionary to France and who was using the archives and so on. So I went to Dr. David Beale and I said, Merle's not working out, what should I do? And he said, well, 2 things he came up with. One was the World Christian Fundamentals Association, an important organization, which I didn't do, but later Nathan Lintfer, one of our church history students, did pick up and do an excellent dissertation on. But I decided Winona Lake, well, I'm from Indiana, and Winona Lake was located a couple hours from where I grew up. So I thought, I'll go into that. And so it's very interesting, and I keep coming back to it. I would like sometime maybe to revisit some of that, because my dissertation was more straightforward. Here's what happened, here's how it was organized, here's what happened this. But I began to realize as I look back on it now, there's a lot of interpretation of that conference, how it shifted from being a sort of generic conservative Protestant forum for Bible conference and other endeavors to focusing more narrowly on a fundamentalist focus. One of the articles I have in plan for the journal, Lord willing, in the next year or 2, is on William Wolf, who was involved with that, and how he was very strong on making sure Winona Lake was a fundamentalist organization committed to the faith and defending that. And there are other aspects of it as well. Reading through all these sermons that were published there and figuring out what they taught about theology in the Bible, what they said about politics and culture. It was a laboratory for looking into the life of conservative Christianity during the years that it flourished.
Well, I'm sure that was a very formative experience for you, because you went on to write about fundamentalism in particular. And right now, I'm actually reading that book on the history of dispensationalism by Hummel.
Yes.
That you reviewed for us recently. And, he works through some of these things about the early conferences and the impact of that on the growth of dispensationalism, fundamentalism in this country. And every once in a while in these books in that niche, I'll find a footnote referencing your dissertation. So that's always very encouraging.
Yeah, I actually did an article once for the Detroit Seminary Journal on the history of the Bible Conference movement.
Okay.
Kind of giving an overview of all of those and how influential they were on the development of fundamentalism and Christianity there as well.
That's great. You have dedicated yourself a lot to writing, but of course you've done a number of other things here at the university. Can you talk about the various roles that you've had here, maybe how the Lord led you to stay after you graduated, and then the different ministries that he opened up for you?
Well, I was a teaching assistant, as I mentioned, in the history program, which was actually, I look back on as a very valuable experience. I mean, I had graduated with a bachelor's in history, so I had no teaching experience except for Sunday school and things like that. So it was my first exposure to an academic setting, working with the history department with a lot of full professors who treated GAs as though they were also fellows. They didn't, we were not students who were hanging around them, but we were colleagues. Dr. Panosian was very strong on that, who was the head of our division, for example. So that was important to me, plus teaching and working with students and learning some things about what students are like. And I actually went to the press after that, at first just to work while I was finishing my dissertation. And work in the editorial department, first of all. And I decided even after I finished my dissertation, that I thought that this is probably what I should continue to do, at least for now, and also opportunities involved for writing as well as editing. After a number of years of that, I had the opportunity to work in the library in basically a resource center, archives there, which I enjoyed. And then after that, after about 3 or 4 years, the opportunity moved to kind of transition to teaching in the history department, and also some occasion with the School of Religion and the seminary. And so I went through that at that point. And like I said, for over 20 years, I've been full-time faculty.
Okay, well, that's great. So that goes back to the early 2000s, which is actually when I started teaching as well. And that was a period of time when some of the older folks were thinking about retiring at that point, and or moving on to other ministries. And so the Lord opened up the door for you. Would you say, I don't know all the details, but would you say you were maybe 20% in the seminary, or was it just a class a semester most of the time?
Well, it kind of varied, because when I first came, we still had the MA in church history. So I actually taught like American church history, which is part of that program, once or twice. I taught history of doctrine, as historical theology was called back then. So there were times I had at least probably one course. Maybe there was a semester where I had 2 courses, but I also did for the School of Religion undergraduate. I introduced a course on history of Christianity because our former dean, Roy Short, wanted a church history emphasis in the undergrad program. So I began that course.
Excellent.
And then later, for many years, I taught modern cults because the church history background, plus the people don't understand a church history program is history, but also you have theology and biblical studies minors. So you actually have a little broader preparation there. So I actually taught cults for, I think I figured once, over 30 times between doing it each semester and summer school. And in fact, right now, my Sunday school class at church, I'm doing a section on cults, which is kind of distilling all of that down into hopefully about 5 or 6 weeks. So I had a regular appearance in seminary and School of Religion, never more than probably than a fourth of my time, though.
Well, you had quite a variety of things between that and all of the sort of non-religious history courses that you taught. Didn't you also get some kind of certificate in military history at some point?
Well, there's two things there. I am certified for military history. I had to go to Fort Leavenworth. I could tell people I spent time in Leavenworth.
Okay.
But there are two prisons in Leavenworth, the military one and the secular one. But I did a 2-week course there on teaching military history because our military history course is attached to our ROTC program, which is basically done through Furman University here in Greenville.
Right.
But for some reason, Army regulations, we have to offer the military history on our own campus.
Okay.
So I did that. The other work, though, when the university underwent accreditation, had a snag for me in that I was in church history, which I never thought much about it. But for our accrediting association, church history is a religion degree. Okay. And so I needed graduate hours in regular history there. So I did a certificate that way, taking course, basically early Europe from ancient Greece up through the Reformation, and did courses that way, plus a couple of other courses in addition. And so that kind of filled out my qualifications in there. I had actually, the university was paying for it, and I had kind of fun doing it.
Yeah.
It's like my daughter said, my daughter just finished her degree in medical school this year, but she said, my problem is that what I'm good at is going to school. It's true of her father too.
Yeah. Well, that's great if you're also in school teaching.
Yes.
You know, and it sounds like you have such a rich and varied background and bring so much to the table for perspective. And that's the next question, really. The last question of this episode is, you have been here at the university for a long time. And so you have observed firsthand not only Bob Jones University, but through that fundamentalism, and then you've got this broader perspective of the history of the church and the history of our country and so forth. So as you think about that, what would you say is the thing, or maybe the few things, that make BJU distinctive? And with that, what does it have to offer to Christianity in the 21st century?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Part of it is the fact that we are a non-denominational Christian school. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with denominations. You need to have in fact, I'm a little concerned sometimes with the growth of so many non-denominational churches. I wonder where exactly they stand sometimes. You want a denominational tradition, Baptist, Presbyterian, whatever it might be, and the theology attached to that. But you also need a place where Christians can talk to Christians of other denominational backgrounds, work with them, learn from each other, and prepare them for whatever aspect of ministry it would be. It's in a sense, it's an extension of what Bob Jones Sr. started with. He was an evangelist who held evangelistic meetings where every gospel church in an area would join together. And so he envisioned the school the same way, get all gospel preaching Christians together for the impact of that work on the world, on the community around them, on the world at large. And I think BJU has done that a great deal. So I see that and Orthodox, non-denominational Christianity, but which respects the denominational tradition. Charles Brokenshire, I mentioned, who was a figure here back when the school was in Tennessee, when it moved to Greenville. When he came here, Bob Jones Sr. wrote him and said, now, are you as a Presbyterian going to have any problem teaching Methodist students? And he said in a letter back, no, I would never dream of, and the word he used was wounding other students and their understanding of issues like free will and so on. And I thought, that's a pretty good philosophy there.
Yeah.
Now the seminary specifically, I think, in the commitment to biblical theology is our foundation and approach.
Yes.
To me, the biblical theological approach, when I was first explained to me back when I was in the program and since that time, is a place where Christians of different backgrounds can come and discuss the scripture, work through the scripture, to enrich their own traditions and their own beliefs, but also learn from each other in that way, and to approach the Bible not from a systematic theological approach. I don't have anything problem with systematic theology. I think it's important, it's vital in fact, but I think it's a good basis for our seminary for how it can reach and prepare people for ministry, not just pastorally, but in any aspect of dealing in the church.
Well, that's so helpful. And as I think back on what Jim Berg said and Dan Olinger on that same question, there really is a lot of parallel in the answers you've given, and trying to articulate what we're attempting to do, and how the university and the seminary have approached our educational mission. And it's been reaffirming to me, it's been strengthening to me as I'm still involved in this, to be reminded of that emphasis on biblical theology and kind of a broad-based effort to reach the people of God and prepare them for whatever ministry and whatever denomination that the Lord has called them to. So thank you, and thank you for all your years of contribution here. We're going to come back in the second episode with some other questions, but this has been a wonderful start.
Well, thank you.